Welcome to another edition of Park Talk Podcast, the official podcast of the Naperville Park District, where you can engage your senses.
Welcome back to our Park Talk podcast studio for our second series, where we'll hear from leaders and pioneers of emerging sports in our area. I'm Sue Omenson, Community Development Manager for the Naperville Park District, and I'll be your host for this series. In today's episode, we're going to hear from a high school teacher who is passionate about the sport of ultimate Frisbee. I'm excited to welcome our guest, Arnoush Javaherian, also known as Java, who is a science teacher of anatomy and physiology at Neuqua Valley High School in Naperville. And I'm happy to welcome back to the show Brock Atwell, Program Manager for the Park District. Thanks to both of you for being here today. So Java, how do you play ultimate Frisbee? Can you explain a little to our audience who may not know the sport?
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. And basically how ultimate's played is that it's a game where you play on something smaller than a football field. You throw the disc by pulling it off, just kind of like a kickoff in football. When you have the disc, you can only pivot like you can in basketball. And you have to throw the Frisbee to one of your teammates. Your teammates can run around the field all they want. And so you throw it and hopefully they catch it. If they catch it, then they have to pivot from there. And then your other teammates get open. And eventually you keep moving the disc down the field until one of your teammates catches it in the end zone. So it's a very fast-paced game. Any 7 people on your team can score a point. Any 7 players on your team can make a great defensive play. Anybody can make a play at any time. And anyone can score at any time. So that's a wonderful aspect of our game. And so that's basically how it's played.
And how did you personally discover ultimate?
So funny story there. I was actually a senior in high school. This was 1994. And I went to school in Rockford, Illinois, at Rockford Guilford High School. And one of my friends comes up to me one day, being my senior year, and says, "Hey, Arnoush, we have this new game that we've been playing. Like, you should come out and play with us in the front lawn of the school today." And I said, "Okay, what is the game called?" And they're like, "Oh, it's Ultimate Frisbee." Never heard it before in my life. First time. So I said, "Sure, these are my buddies." So I went out and started playing, and I kid you not, 10 minutes in, hooked. So that's how I got started. But actually, one of my big regrets, Sue, is that I went off to University of Illinois in Champaign, and I went out for the team because I loved it so much, and I didn't stick with it. And I didn't play in college, and I didn't play afterwards. And afterwards, there's a lot of adult leagues. That's something we can talk about later, too. And there's actually the club league, which is very intense, and there's huge tournaments across the nation, and there's huge tournaments now actually across the world. And I really think that, looking back on it, that's one of my big regrets in life, is that I did not play ultimate at a competitive level at college and club. And I think that I could have, and I think I would have been fairly decent, at the time. And so I always tell that to my players now so that they don't have the regrets that I do.
And maybe that's part of the reason you wanted to start it at Neuqua.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually another funny story about how I started up, because I didn't start teaching Neuqua until I was 30 years old. I played it recreationally for all my 20s. I always told people, I'm always like, I always want to coach football in the fall and maybe just play ultimate or start up an ultimate club for fun in the spring. And I always thought it would be for fun. And so I remember one of the first days here at Neuqua, I remember throwing it out there. I remember saying, "Yeah, I'm thinking about starting up an ultimate club in the spring." And one student knew another student that loved the sport. His name was Ben Raymond. And all of a sudden, Ben came up to me one day in the hall, in my office, and he's like, "Hey, I heard that you want to set up an ultimate Frisbee club." And I'm like, "Yeah, do you know about it? Do you like ultimate?" He's like, "Oh my God, I love ultimate." He's like, "Nobody here at Neuqua plays, but I'd love to help you start up." So he actually was the one that coined my nickname Java. He actually one day sent me an email, and he took my last name and abbreviated. He said Java, and I'm just like, okay. And literally,
it stuck.
It stuck. And he helped me start up the club that year, and we found out about a local league that's played at Schiller Woods near downtown, and and that's kind of how we started, with 48 players that came out that year. So it was pretty exciting.
And you grew pretty quickly from there, right?
Oh my God, we grew immensely. Students jumped on board. Our second year, We went from 48 students to over 100. Over the last couple of years, we've been over 200. We even have started up a middle school division because so many parents were asking me a few years ago, like, how can my middle school kid play? How can my middle school play? So we've been working actually with Brock, running that both in the spring as well as in the fall, as well as we now have a summer camp that we've been working with the Park District on. And so through all that, with all the resources and the wonderful support that we've received from the school, from the Park District, we've been able to grow. And really, without the school support and without the Naperville Park District support, I don't think we would be here.
Brock, how did the Park District get involved with Ultimate?
Yeah, Java reached out to myself about 8 or 9 years ago looking for some space. At that time, honestly, I had never heard of Ultimate, and field space is an issue. And we get calls all the time looking for field space. I did not realize the size and scope of the program. So we provided some field space initially. And, when you look at Ultimate and what I like about Ultimate is that it's a very inclusive sport. It brings in kids. You don't have to be 6'4", 200 pounds with 1% body fat. You can be, but you don't have to be that type of individual, and you can be a stud Ultimate player. So I really like the fact that you go out to a practice, you go out to a game, and you see kids from all walks of life. It's obvious as you're talking to the kids, as you're looking at the kids, that it's not necessarily just this kind or just that kind. It mixes a lot of different kids. So that aligns with the Park District goals and what it is that the Park District tries to accomplish. So Java and I started talking about partnering together. I believe the first thing we offered was a summer camp, and within a year or two, it was over 100 kids. And so when you look at some of our quote-unquote mainstream sports, those camps, the football camps, the soccer camps, those camps don't bring in over 100 kids in Naperville. So I was blown away at the numbers and the interest level with the sport of Ultimate. So Java had been offering leagues in the spring and fall, as he spoke to. And so we wanted to jump on board with that. I think it was right around that time that we started offering it to the younger individuals. And so for the last 8 or 9 years, we've partnered on camps and leagues, and it's been a great relationship.
So what age do you need to be to start learning Ultimate?
So we actually start at the 4th grade. That is one of the beautiful things about our sport, is that 4th graders can play, 5th graders can play. It doesn't matter if you're, and all the way up until, people still play at the age of 50 or 60. Honest to God, it is very inclusive. First of all, and there's a number of things that make it very inclusive. One is that to be honest with you, it's a very cheap sport. All you need is a field, 8 cones, and a Frisbee. One of the other things I think that we would be remiss not to talk about is how our sport is based on spirit of the game. And that's a term that we use in Ultimate, that basically what that means is that we are a sport based on sportsmanship. For example, we don't even have any refs, and we never have refs. It is a sport that you make your own calls. And really, it teaches you to be a person of integrity. So what the players learn is conflict resolution. And they learn how to work things out. And a lot of times they learn to be like, all right, you're right, I did foul you. Let's you now have the Frisbee, let's move on. And they'll work through that. So it's a wonderful, wonderful part of our game. And that lends over to our environment. The values of our club are now being integrated into their lives, because our club is based on integrity, humility, positivity, and family. And I think that those 4 things have come across to our players immensely.
When a sport is founded on those principles, that's a great thing. That's an awesome thing, and that's something that the Park District, and I really think everyone can support. So that's huge as far as I'm concerned. Not to mention the fact that, if you go to high school in this area, you go to high school with 4,000 classmates. And, if you want to, let's say you decide you want to play football, if you decide that at 7th, 8th grade, a lot of times it's too late. You're not going to get on the field. Ultimate, with it being a newer sport and a growing sport, you can, and Arnoush can correct me if I'm wrong, but you can join the sport as a freshman, sophomore, and actually play the sport and enjoy it with your teammates. So that's a great thing to give kids an outlet, after school activity, something they can participate in where they may not otherwise have those options.
Yeah, and absolutely. And we want seniors to come out in high school, and we have had. Just last year, I had a student in my class that was a senior, and he comes out, and his name is Joey, and he does a great job. Like, he falls in love with the sport. He's there at every practice. He's there at every league game, and like, to my knowledge, he's gone off to college, and now he's playing in college. And so it's never too late to pick up our sport, which is another beautiful thing, because honestly, like, our sport shows you that, like, if you work hard and if you're dedicated, and if you're passionate about something, then you can be successful at it, even if you start later on in life.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people, whether it's young children all the way through, when you become an older person, a senior, you want to belong to something. And Ultimate allows adults to belong to something, to be a part of something. So it's just one more option.
Clearly, you can play Ultimate for fun or competitively at the high school or college level or even worldwide.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that there is a push right now through USA Ultimate, which is a governing body here in the United States, to get Ultimate Frisbee into the Olympics. In 20 years or 30 years, I do believe Ultimate will be as popular as any other sport. I have a new baby, and her name's Jade, and I do hope that in 15 years or whatever it is that she's playing, that it is big enough that she will get the recognition and the sport will get the recognition that I think it deserves.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to submit your comments, suggestions, and questions for our mailbag segment through our website at napervilleparks.org/podcasts. Additional information on Naperville Park District programs and services can be found at napervilleparks.org. The Naperville Park District's mission is to provide recreation and park experiences that promote healthy lives, healthy minds, and a healthy community. Park Talk Podcast is a production of the Naperville Park District.